Hello everyone, welcome to the FEI YouTube channel. My name is Han. You may know me from my own channel, Han Equestrian, but today I am of course guest vlogging for the FEI. I'm going to be talking to you guys all about how to bring your horses back into work after an extended period of time off. I'm going to run through the basic steps that I take with my own horses, as well as some of the hints and the tips that I've picked up over the last few years that really help to smooth out the entire process. Most recently, I brought my young horse Peach back into work after a winter spell, so she is going to be our guinea pig for today. I will introduce you all to her shortly, but first let's get this video started. On to tip number 1, prior preparation prevents poor performance. So you guys know what it's like when you put your horse out for a few months, they haven't had any ridden work. More often than not, they're going to come back in looking a little chunkier. There's going to be a few extra kgs on the body than when you put them out in the first place. So I always think it's good to just start off by reassessing their feed, and obviously it can also go the other way too. Sometimes they might drop off a little bit, so you might just want to build their feed up a little bit in the run up to bring them back into work. And on that sort of same vein, if they have drastically changed shape, then it's always a good idea to also get your saddles refitted, at least get them looked at just to make sure they're still looking okay. I know when I brought Peach back into work, she had quite the barrel body going on. She had definitely chunked up, so I ended up getting both of her saddles completely refitted. And then really depending on how long your horse has actually had off, it can also be a good idea to consider getting your dentist out just to have their teeth looked at, and get a farrier out just to make sure they don't need a trim, that there's nothing going on with their hooves, because no hoof, no horse. And then at least you know everything's kind of prepared and you can start to get the ball rolling with some work. So I feel like some of you guys are already going to be familiar with Miss Peach, but for those of you who have not met her before, this is my horse Peach. She is a 5-year-old stock horse cross thoroughbred mare, and basically she was broken in, went and had a foal, and then was reintroduced to a ridden work at the beginning of last year. And once she'd done that for a few months, we put her on a winter spell so that she could have a few months off to digest the things that she had learned, and she was brought back into work just before summer. So she's now been back in ridden work for a few months. She's doing super well, so she's going to help me demonstrate today the process that we use to bring her back into work. Although she does look like she's ready to go back to bed right now. So now that you've met Peach, it is time to talk about tip number 2, which is slow and steady wins the race. I always like to think of it like when you go back to the gym after having time off, you don't immediately go back to lifting the same weights or running the same distance. You build up to it, and it is exactly the same with your horse. Obviously, if you rush them too much at the beginning and they get a lot of muscle soreness, they might get sour to the work, and worst case scenario, you might end up with an injury. So if your horse has just had 1 month off, they're generally not going to lose too much fitness. The guiding rule is basically every month they have off after that first one, you want to add another month of reconditioning work in. So 2 months off, that would equal 4 weeks of reconditioning work, and 3 months off, that would be 8 weeks of reconditioning work. And really the reason behind this is that even though, yes, horses' cardiovascular fitness, so their heart and their lungs, that will bounce back quite quickly, but it's actually the musculoskeletal system that drops off very quickly and takes a lot longer to bring back. So that's things like the tendons and ligaments, obviously very, very important for keeping a horse sound, and that's really the key reason for taking things slowly and being conservative when you are bringing your horse back into work. Keep in mind that the amount of time needed for reconditioning can obviously vary depending on things like the horse's age, their previous fitness level, and whether they were actually out because they were injured. So if they were injured, obviously also talk to your vet, because there might be some specific requirements or things you need to be doing before you start a reconditioning program. On to tip number 3, and that is create yourself a program. It's so incredibly helpful to have something written down to help keep you on track, and your horse as well. And I find that it will definitely help you monitor your horse. So if you think that they're not quite progressing through how you thought they would, for example, if there's any heavy sweating, heavy breathing, or just in general their demeanor is that of someone who's feeling a little bit exhausted, then you can either repeat a week or you can create a slightly larger program so that you're progressing them a little bit more slowly. And there are a lot of great programs out there that you can definitely use as a template to build something for your own horse. For me, my program tends to look something like this. It'll be 6 to 8 weeks long. In week 1, it'll be just walking and a little bit of groundwork as well. In week 2, I'll reintroduce the trot, but just a few minutes on each rein. From weeks 3 to 5, I will steadily start to increase the amount of trot that we're doing. I generally add about a minute or 2 every single week. And then in the final 3 weeks, so 6 to 8, I'll also reintroduce the canter, and the same principle, I'll just slowly build that up through the weeks. And also don't be afraid to do like a week 0 where all you do is groundwork. I did do that with Peach because number 1, she was very, very young, and because she had had a significant amount of time off, I just really wanted to make sure that, you know, she still remembered some of the buttons, that she still know how to turn and stop on the ground just before I risk it all and actually get on for the first ride. On to tip number 4, how to deal with a hot horse. Now, I'm going to be honest, Peach is probably one of the most relaxed horses I've ever owned, and she generally she's pretty even keel all the time. She's pretty relaxed. So she really wasn't too much of a challenge to bring back into work, but understandably, most horses will come back in with at least a little bit of excess energy, and some of them are just going to be absolutely full of themselves, as I'm sure you guys know. Now, I know the temptation is to chuck them on the lunge and let them tire themselves out, but I promise you, if you do some in-hand work, it is so much more effective. Basically, if you can get their brain focusing on you again, it starts to relax their whole body, and suddenly they're focusing on you more than all the things that are happening around them, and the adrenaline levels are coming down. Personally, my favorite exercises to do is anything that involves moving the legs around without necessarily going forward. So I do a lot of turn on the quarters, turn on the forehand, things like that. Even just simple stuff such as asking them to stop and go, all from the ground, works surprisingly well. And I just find it's a much better strategy than relying on a long lunging session, which puts unnecessary strain on their body. And they start to sometimes get a bit of a negative association with the arena as well. If every time they come in, it turns into a bit of a high adrenaline kind of stressful zone for them, you'd much rather it be a nice calm, relaxing place for them to be. The aim is always low adrenaline and just zen. That's what we want in the arena. On to tip number 5, and that is less is more when it comes to lunging. Now, lunging is a really great tool, but it is surprisingly strenuous on a horse, and particularly if they have had time off. A really good alternative is long lining, because you can actually control the speed of your horse and you're not limited to circular shape, so it's going to reduce the impact overall. And then when you do lunge, make sure to make the diameter of the circle as big as you possibly can to again reduce the impact on your horse. Tip number 6 is mix it up. Make sure that not every ride is just you circling the arena, because I promise that you and your horse are going to get very bored very quickly. So from the very start, make sure that you are varying the work. My favorite forms of cross training are things like hill work, pole work, even lateral work can be good too, going out on a trail ride or a hack. And then if you've got the time and the money, going to a treadmill or doing water walking, even at the beach, is obviously a really great way to also increase your horse's condition. And I also really like to keep in mind eventer Amanda Ross's 2 surface rule. So basically every single time you ride your horse, you're aiming to get them out onto at least 2 different types of surfaces. So if you start off in the arena, you might then want to take them down the road to cool off, or take them out into the paddock and do a little bit of work. And again, just that varying the terrains is such a great way to improve their condition. In a previous guest vlog I did for the FEI, I did get to spend a day with Amanda, and she talks a lot about how she trains her event horses. So make sure to also check that video out if you're interested in hearing more about her ways of training. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Let me know down below in the comment section if there's a particular topic that you want me to cover in the next guest vlog. I personally love going and speaking to experts in certain fields, so I don't know if that's something that interests you guys, but let me know. And I'll see you all on the next one. Bye guys.